What's important to you? My mission is to ask as many people as possible this question, because I believe once you know what's important, you can design and build a life of purpose, meaning, and fulfillment. My name is James Dean. I'm a life coach, and I hope this podcast inspires you to uncover what's important to you. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at James Dean Coaching, or connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also learn how I can help you understand what's important at jamesdeancoaching.com. Today's guest was born and living in Dublin. He is a 49-year-old husband to Maureen, father of 2 teenage children, and a small business owner. As a leader on the popular RTE television show Operation Transformation in 2012, he managed to lose 23 kilograms in just 7 weeks. And now, more than 10 years later, he has not only kept the excess weight off, but has gone on to share his story to corporate and public groups, assisting them to change focus, maintain motivation, and reach whatever goals they might struggle to reach without some help. Now, as a social marathon runner and triathlete, he has a keen interest in the power of sport and exercise, and is a recognized advocate for health and well-being, particularly in the family unit. As a Sport Ireland and EU Sport Ambassador, he played a key national and international role in the ongoing success and development of the pan-European European Week of Sport Be Active campaign from 2016 to 2019. Following a 6-year battle with serious injury, he is currently working his way back to fitness and is in training for back-to-back Dublin and New York marathons in the autumn of 2022. Today we find out what's important to Killian Byrne. Hi Killian, thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem. Thank you, for having me, James.
Brilliant. So we're going to go straight in with the first question, which is, Killian, what's important to you?
Yeah, you know what? This was a more difficult question than I thought, because everybody has their goals in life. Everybody has their roads that they want to travel down. But when you try and narrow it down, it's not something really that I think I can say, I have one thing and this is what's important to me. There's a multitude of things and they all feed off each other, so there's a hierarchy of preference. But sometimes something can be more important today, but it's less important tomorrow. But if you were to try and pick something to start with, I would say that over the past couple of years, for me, the most important thing in my life has to be effort. Effort, which leads into consistency, which leads into honesty, which leads into progress, and that brings you down that road. But if you say effort, it is going to be I try and I fail every single day. And you know what? I think one of the most important things that people need to understand is that failure is actually all right. There's nothing wrong with failing, because if you are continually told, well done, you're brilliant, if you are continually told you are successful at this or that or the other, you can't improve. So you can't. But I try and go, look, today I'm just going to try and be the best that I can be. And today's best might be better than yesterday. It might be worse than what tomorrow might be. But if I can go to bed in the evening time to say, look, I tried my best today, and that can be around everything. It can be around working from home. Did I get the amount of hours done that I really should have done? Did I work on my personal development? And personal development might be, putting down the phone for an hour. It might be reading a book. It might be going for a run. And then within that, when I went for a run, Did I try as I should have tried? Did I slack off? Did I stop at 4.93 kilometers and not make it to 5 kilometers? And you know what? Some days 4.93 kilometers is perfect. So it might. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was out for a run a couple of days ago, and I like to run. I live right beside a large public park, and it's a brilliant place to run. But a lot of the time I like to get in the car and go down to Dunleary and run on the pier there. And it's a lovely place to run, and it's perfectly flat, and it, you know, makes it much, much easier. And I had 45 minutes to do, and I was at about 43 minutes. And I went, you know what? I'm at the end of the pier. There's an ice cream shop here. I'm going to stop and I'm going to have an ice cream. And I had a 99, and it was just brilliant. It was ideal. It was it made that run an awful lot better. So it did, you know. Whereas if I'd gone on for the extra 2 minutes, I wouldn't have had the ice cream. I wouldn't have sat back and reflected on how nice the weather was and the surroundings and the people walking past and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, the effort of trying to be the best that you can be feeds into everything else. I can remember a story once, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but the English rugby player Johnny Wilkinson used to say or said, or somebody said about him, that he lives his life as if he's being followed by a camera all the time, and people are watching him all the time. And because of that pressure, he always has to perform in absolutely everything that he does. Now, that's kind of oppressive. And, you know, if you live your life like that, that's grand if it works for you. For me, being the best I can be satisfies both levels of that. You know, there's somebody watching me. Should I really be doing this? And then I have to think and make that decision. Yes, actually, it's okay. If you want to do this or this or this or this, you've given yourself permission to do it. And then you have to live by that decision. Does that make sense? Because I went through huge amounts of my life with, you know, building up regrets. I wish I did this. I wish I did this. I wish I did this. And those regrets tend to take over, and they become oppressive, and they sit on your shoulders, and you are always comparing yourself to something that you never actually managed to do, or a person you never actually managed to be. And in that way, then you're always a failure, because you are never reaching these targets that you set yourself. But if you have the, you know, be the best you can be attitude, you can go to bed happy and say, I tried today. Maybe I didn't reach certain areas, but I'm going to work on that tomorrow. And I've given myself permission to say, that's okay. What you did today was enough. Tomorrow, you know, let's try and make it better, make it worse, change things, or whatever is the right thing to do.
I really like that answer. Interesting, because it's interesting when you mentioned about Johnny Wilkinson, because I remember listening to him on a recent podcast. I was on the Diary of the CEO with Stephen Bartlett recently, and he was talking kind of about that, and because since he retired or finished rugby, you kind of not really see much of him, and he was talking about his own sort of change in a sense of since he retired from rugby and his experience from rugby. And that whole thing, if you said that perfect example you gave about, well, at the end of my run, you know what, I'm going to call it now and I'm going to sit and have an ice cream. And he said this story, which kind of, I think, reflects on that piece, where he said that at the end of a game where they'd lost, whether it be for the club or say for England, he'd be the one, I got to be the last to leave. I've got to be the last out the shower. I've got to suffer the most. I've got to, you know, I don't deserve anything else. And he said he would look at the other guy who within 20 minutes of coming off the pitch was shower changed in the suit and right, lads, where are we going for dinner? And he was like, how can this person think like this? He should be in the same suffering as me. And it's only through reflection now he's gone, why didn't I just allow whatever to be and just move on? He put himself in that position of, oh no, I have to, because if I'm going to be the best, I must suffer as the best, kind of, you know what I mean? I have to be the best at taking the loss. I have to be the best at losing type thing. And he kind of then lost himself a bit. So that example you gave, I think, is really, it kind of mirrors to kind of, I don't know if he used the word regret, but he kind of think, oh, he said I would have loved to just been that guy and gone, okay, yeah, we lost the game. That was crap, but
yeah,
let's
like,
move on,
maybe regret is a very harsh word. You could possibly talk about acceptance,
Yeah.
and accepting where you are. Like, one of the things that people know me from at the very start, about 10 years ago, in Operation Transformation, and my, I hate to use the phrase, but my journey since then. But I went through a period after OT where it was, you have to do this, you have to perform to this level, and I was expected as a leader and as somebody who had been successful to reach certain levels and certain targets. And when I ran my first marathon, and I set a goal of I can do this in 4 hours, and I didn't do it in 4 hours, so I did it in 4.5 hours or something like that. And then I said, right, I didn't reach my goal, then I have to do it again, and I have to do it again. And I've never reached a 4-hour marathon in the 6 or 7 marathons that I've done. But I've spent the past couple of years recovering from a back injury, and maybe it's old age, maybe it's the fact that I have been restricted in my abilities to exercise, but I think I've reached the stage where I'm glad that I get the opportunity to do these things. And you know what? Whether you run them in 4 hours or 4.5 hours or 4:45, I've done 6 marathons, and I've done 2 half Ironman triathlons, and I've done everything in between. I've done hundreds and hundreds of 5K. And if I only get to run 5K 3 times a week at lunchtime, well, then that's pretty good. I am happy to have reached that standard and that goal. And that's not to say that I don't push myself. I do push myself, and I do try and reach certain goals, targets, extremes, whatever you want to say. I'm always trying to get better, but I've grown out of the rigid expectations. Because if I run, like I'm planning to run Dublin Marathon and New York Marathon this year, and they are within 7 days of each other. And my goal is to run them, to enjoy them, have the best crack ever, give as many high fives and as many smiles, and eat as many jellies and do all that kind of stuff, and to come off the back of those marathons going, I am happy now. If I never run a marathon again, I've reached that level of acceptance. Whereas previously I'd be going, if you don't hit 4.5 hours, you have to do it again. You have to keep trying, keep trying. Because a lot of the time people try to reach a level of perfection. What we don't really understand, and people are beginning to accept it, because the area of psychology is opened up, and sports psychology is opened up, and people can read books, and they see practitioners on social media and stuff like that. People begin to understand now that perfection doesn't exist. You cannot be perfect. If it did exist, we would all stop. Which is why trying to be better, or be the best you can be, is, for me, the best way that I can live. Because I'm just not going to be perfect, and I'm never going to reach that ideal. And if I don't reach that ideal, I don't want to spend my life being disappointed. I want to say, yeah, you know what? Fair play to you. You did well. You ran another marathon. You did a long run. You did your training, and you should be happy with what you have achieved. So you should. Now, you still need to set levels. There's no point in saying I'm going to run a marathon. It's going to take me 12 hours to do it. So I still have those goals, but I'm not hugely pushed. I'm not driven by the ultimate goal. The process to me is just as important as the outcome goal.
No, I was just going to say, and that was the word that was coming into my mind, in the sense of like, it's enjoying the process. And as you say, kind of like, when it comes to marathons as well, and since we share a similar story and experience of going through them as well, and it's the ones that I've enjoyed the most are the ones where I kind of just enjoyed it. I wasn't necessarily focused on a time or a split or a this or a that. I was just being just in it and just going with it and just enjoying the crowd, or enjoying even some when there wasn't a crowd, just enjoying what I was doing, and just being in the moment was definitely the most enjoyable parts of it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I had the same experience. My last big city marathon was in Paris, and I was in really good shape. I was probably in the best shape that I could have been. You train all winter. The races at the beginning of April, and you train, you know, December, January, February time in Ireland when it's lashing rain, it's freezing cold, and you're wearing your thermals and all that kind of stuff. And then you get to Paris and it's 22 degrees at, you know, 8 o'clock in the morning, and it just wasn't forecast. And I had an absolutely horrific race, a really, really horrific race. If I was concentrating and using time as the yardstick, it was my slowest marathon ever. But by God, what a great place to run. You're going down the street and you turn a corner and there's the Sacré-Cœur, and on the other side of the road is the Eiffel Tower, and you're running through one of the greatest cities in the world. And you know, you're running, I will never experience, well, hopefully when I get to New York, but you're running with 50,000 people, you know, it's just, you know, and if you take that as your experience from the day, well, then it's always going to be a success. So it is, you know. So it's these arbitrary targets that we set each other, that it's like, if people ask me, you know, what do you know, how do you define success, and how do you deal with, you know, who is good and who is good, you know, I'm never going to be a 2 hour 30 marathoner, you know, and the people who do run at that speed are just phenomenal athletes. But the person who plugs away at 5 hours, to me, is the person who really deserves that success. Because for the person who runs a marathon in 5 hours, you know, I'm going to generalize a little bit here, but, you know, training was probably a bit of a struggle for them. They could have had, you know, family, you know, time issues, work issues. They're getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to run. You know, they're fitting their training around life. And, you know, that 5 hour marathoner has spent twice the amount of time running around the city than the 2.5 hour marathoner. And it's just, you know, that's, to me, a success. Success is the person who continues to fail, but dusts themselves down and gets back up and keeps going again. I can remember, I think both of us did the one of the first or second half Ironman that happened in Dublin. And I can remember cycling into the Phoenix Park after the in the first one, and there were people walking past me with their medals on them already. And I'm cycling in, and I've still got a half marathon to run. And I'm going, God, you know, which one of us is better? Is there a better or a worse athlete? If those people are going home after 4.5 or 5 hours, and I still have 2 hours of a run in front of me, are we any better or worse than each other? No, we're not. We are different people, and we have different goals and different targets, and we can't spend our lives setting these arbitrary limits on our success based on what we feel other people should be like. You know, run the race you're in right now. Don't run the race you want to be, or run somebody else's race. Run your own race. And if that is 5 hours for your 26 miles, well, then bully for you.
No, and I think it's a great analogy for so many other things. And one of the things I found with it competing or sort of participating would be the word, in especially in triathlon, and those are longer distance races in the sort of 70s races and the fulls, is that person, as you say, who's already finished, like I experienced when you're coming in to go on the run and there's people walking past you with medals. The way I see it is, though, when you go back to your first word, when you said the effort, and to me, it's like they've put in the same effort to get their time as I'm putting in my effort to get whatever I'm doing. So just because their effort equates to being quicker doesn't mean that my effort is any less valuable than the effort that they put in. It's just the outcome is different. That's all it is. And it's a leveler in a sense of like, you know, that person who went in and had to try as hard as they did to get that fast time, they burnt themselves out, that did everything. I'm doing this exactly the same for me. So that's where, as you say, the comparison isn't a fair comparison. If you were to ask each other, did you give everything? We'd both say yes. The outcome was just the difference.
But you caught yourself there a little bit in the difference between competing and participating. And you're still competing, but that competition is with yourself.
Completely.
And that competition might be the difference. And one of the things I found in the second half Ironman that I did was that actually I was much more likely to finish the race, first of all, and much more likely to finish enjoying it if I slowed down. I was standing on the slipway ready to go in for the swim, and I was absolutely petrified, and I was so scared that I was going to fail that I went completely the other side, and I said, look, just swim it. If you give up, you give up. There's a rescue boat there to pull you out of the water. And I ended up swimming faster than I actually would have if I had really pushed myself. And because I was relaxed, I had a better transition, I had a better bike. And, you know, it's just the inner turmoil. If you can calm that inner turmoil, because again, you're competing against a whole load of other people, but actually you're not. The only competition. And, you know, I don't think you'll argue with me on this, James. You know, you and I are not likely to win any race that we partake in, so we're not.
Not at all.
We are never going to be up at the pointy end of the results. And if the difference in me being 956th or 872nd, you know, that's a real win in my books.
Yeah.
And people might go, yeah, what are you talking about? I can always remember going into a bike store down the road from me, and I had money in my pocket and it was burning a hole there, and I was itching to buy a new set of wheels for my bike. And I said, you know, give me those ones, the ones with a big price tag on them. And the guy in the shop looked at me and he said, keep your money in your pocket, mate, and if you lose 5 kilos, you will do much better than any set of wheels will get you. And I really, you know, I still go to that shop. I admired his honesty. I will recommend it till the day I die, because he was dead right. You're not competing. Just be the best that you can be and work hard at what you can actually manage, because there's a whole load, everybody knows about control the controllables. There's a whole load of things out there that you have absolutely no control over. The person who's in the swim beside me might have spent 10 grand on their bike, and they might be the best cyclist in the world, and I'm never going to beat them. I'm just not. But so don't worry about them. You know, I know how I perform. I know if it's warm or if it's cold. I know if I've got a sore shoulder or sore knees or whatever. I'll control that. I can't control what anybody else is doing. So be happy with my effort all of the time. And it sounds as if you're not trying very hard, but actually you are. And, you know, that trying to be the best today, it's something that I would compare. I gave up cigarettes, 20 odd years ago. And the way I gave up cigarettes was, I'm not going to smoke today. And if I can compare and transfer that experience into daily life of, you know what, today I'm going to try hard. Let tomorrow take care of itself. And if today is good, then, you know, that's another tick in the box. Tomorrow mightn't be so good, but we can work on that the day after as well, you know? So it's all of these little wins that you can get, and all of these this consistency of trying will invariably add up, you know? Like we are the product. Like if people go, oh God, I put on 3 pounds over Christmas, or, you know, 2 stone over COVID or something like that. And it's like, look, you know what? You didn't get fat over a weekend. You are the product of what you do on a regular basis. It's not what's important it's not what you eat between Friday and Monday. Actually, it's what you eat between Monday and Friday is what's important,
Yeah.
and it's the same, it's what you do between December and January as opposed to January to December. And it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the more consistent that you can get in your life, and it all adds up, all these little wins, tick the box, and you will find that you will be a better person because of it.
Do you think so your involvement in sport and in fitness and in running in particular, do you think that then had a positive impact in other areas of your life, like your career, business, or anything else? Do you think you were able to move the stuff you learned from there into other parts of it?
Well, I think the effort in trying to be the best is something that just goes right through your life. It's a constant all the way through in everything that you do. COVID was difficult for me on a business point of view. I'm in the event management business, and the minute Leo Varadkar stood up on those steps in New York, my business went from 100 to 0 overnight. It's been very difficult to build it back up again, but I'm trying. There's nothing I can do about it except keep trying. And it's the same. Like, obviously there are benefits to being a fitter person. There are benefits to being a stronger person. I would say that while we are talking about marathons and Ironman, you don't have to do that. If you can get out and exercise, and I'm a big believer in being active, because it makes such a difference to our lives. And if being active to you, the listener, is taking the stairs or getting off the bus 1 or 2 stops earlier, then take those wins when you can get it. You don't have to run marathons. You don't have to run a 5K. You can walk a 5K. You don't have to go out for half an hour. You can go out for 15 minutes. And all of those small wins all add up. But I'm a big believer in taking those wins and putting them in together. And all of the sum of all those little parts add up to something big. It always adds up to something big.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I actually really like instead of kind of the phrase that I would use as well, in sense of physical activity versus say maybe exercise or things, or when I'm talking about myself, I'd use the word training. But if I'm talking to people in general, because I think as well, like when it comes to being physical or physically active, there is just so many options and opportunities. And I think I say, like, I always used to take people running and do running clubs and stuff. And I'd have so many people that go, they hate running. And I'm like, what are you doing here then? Because I actually love running. So it's the wrong fit. But if you actually had, and I think this comes back to the point that you were saying about failure, or sort of that, not wanting to fail, is like, you could try 100 different sports or 100 different things of being physical until you find something that gets you that sort of excitement. You say you don't have to go to just the gym or go out for a run. There's, so many different things. And I always think it goes back to that sort of, I think you said it earlier, so I'd love to, I'd want to, I'd wish I did this type stuff. Whereas like, if there's something that like an activity that really kind of pokes your interest, you should just give it a go, because you never know what may come of it if you do actually try it.
Absolutely. It's like, look, it doesn't matter if you are running 5 days a week or if you're going line dancing twice a week. You are more likely to keep doing something that you enjoy doing. There are people who don't like running but will swim for hours and hours on end. There are people who don't like swimming but will go hill walking with a friend because it is time that they can just spend socially on their own. And it's the difference between exercise and movement in that it's like we spend our lives nowadays sitting in chairs looking at computers. We eat on the go. We have fast food. Our lives are dominated by social media. And I'm sounding like a 50-year-old curmudgeon here, but get up, get out, get some fresh air, have your cup of coffee in the garden if you're lucky enough to have one, go to a park. And I am speaking from a position of privilege in that, I have public parks nearby and I can get in the car and I can go to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
sea, or I'm 10 minutes away from the hills here. But you have to try to make the best of your situation. And, you know, as somebody like yourself who lives in a rural area, you know, going running at night might be difficult. You know,
yeah,
it's dangerous on country roads, and you know, you mightn't have the ability to meet up. But there are GAA clubs, there are
yeah,
rugby clubs, there are running clubs right around the country who are experienced at dealing with those kind of obstacles. And
yeah,
particularly amongst the GAA community,
yeah,
which is just in every village and hamlet and you know, rural two-horse towns everywhere, there is a club of people who gather in one place. And if you can have the opportunity to try and get yourself there, well, then absolutely do it, and see, because you will meet like-minded people who want to
yeah.
try and do something. And it's just, you know, just try your best to get up and get out and get moving.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it brings me on actually something I was going to ask you, because I'm sure we probably share in some ways the experiences, a lot of the experiences that I've had when I've got into, say, into myself into running or triathlon, or even into coaching and things like that, and into life coaching, is one of the things that you almost don't expect, but you kind of should really, in some ways, I think it's going to happen, is actually the connections you make with people, the people
Yeah.
you meet. And I think that's in sometimes where it maybe there's a thing of like, again, that fear of not doing it, or the fear of failure of not doing it, what you could miss out on, that sort of group, as you just said about like even community and with the GAA, it's like the opportunities to actually meet, as you say, other people and like-minded people is massive when you get involved in things.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people need to understand, and this is like a father talking to a teenager or a young child, and you know, the father is saying, just go and talk to them. You'll be fine. You know, you will
Yeah,
make friends, I promise.
yeah,
You are not alone in any thought that you're having. You know, I'm
yeah,
not a people person. I don't like mixing. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. Guarantee you, there's, you know, 10 other people in that group over there who are the exact same. Like, I'm involved in parkrun, and the a lot of people go, I can't run 5K. You know, it's Saturday morning, and you know, I'm not gonna, and we say, look, you don't have to run it. You don't have to go the whole way. You know, you are more than welcome to jog. You are more than welcome to walk. You know, we will stay here until you finish. And if that's an hour or 2 hours or whatever, and they specifically introduced what used to be called a tail runner, is now called the tail walker, is that there is a volunteer who will be last. You know, you will not finish last in parkrun.
yeah,
And you know, that tail walker will walk with you and will give you all the encouragement. And if that means that you're going to spend 90 minutes or 2 hours walking around that 5K park, well, then so be it. That's the way it goes. Because
yeah,
I guarantee it that there are other people out there who were reluctant to start doing whatever. You are not alone in those thoughts. And the hardest bit, you know, sometimes you get sick of all these memes that are out there, but the hardest bit really is just putting on the runners and getting out, you know. And I know we're dealing specifically with exercise, but you know, it can be applied to anything: starting your own business, you know, going down another route, coming up with ideas, or exercise. It really is a case of you just need to start, and don't be afraid of failure. But what you need to try is that effort to pick yourself up and dust yourself down and keep trying. Because the most successful people that I know are the people who never give up trying. You
yeah,
know, like somebody who has tried to do their 5K or their half marathon or their full marathon, and you know, they haven't done it, they haven't tried. You know, it took me 20 times to give up cigarettes before I finally actually did it. And
yeah,
it's the same with absolutely everything. If you give up giving up, well, then you failed. If you keep
yeah,
dusting yourself down, then you've never failed. It's just about the effort to keep trying, and you will get there. I guarantee you'll get there eventually, because all of these little lessons, if you look back and you go, what happened yesterday? Why did I not do this? Why did this happen? Why did this not work? And if you can learn from all of these tiny little mistakes, then you will progress day by day by day by day.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting you said about the memes there, because it brings me on to a question that I like asking everyone who comes on, is like, because I'm actually a person for the memes and the quotes, and I'd use them and I'd reflect on them quite a bit, for different situations depending on what I'm doing. So are there any sort of things like that, or quotes or sort of phrases or turns of phrases that you would use, whether it be in for anything in your life? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Outside, I was actually thinking about this last week. If I'm running a marathon, or if I'm doing, a lot of people have these little mantras, and they put a bit of tape on their wrist and they write something on it. What would my message be? I don't think it would be anything too technical. I might put my kids' names down. I would definitely, I would definitely use words like courage. I would use words like effort. I would use words like honesty. That's kind of the person that I am. I like to use social media with regards to learning from people who I believe know more than I do. There's always an opportunity, and I'm a really big believer in every single interaction is an opportunity to learn. And the learning that you get might be, I'm never going to listen to that person again. Or the learning you can get might be, I'm going to buy this person's book and I'm going to read it from cover to cover, and I'm going to follow them and I'm going to do whatever they say. Each is perfectly valid, because discounting ideas you don't like is just as important as following people you do. And for me, the advent of social media, while it's an incredible waste of my time, is a real opportunity to learn from other people who have achieved what I want to achieve, and that might be watching a 45-minute video of somebody who cycled a bicycle race somewhere, or it might be listening to a 5-minute podcast or a 20-minute podcast that somebody else appeared in. But if you can sort the wheat from the chaff and narrow down what you can learn from, I think you will pick up those little tidbits, and that's where you get your mantras from, and that's where you get your keep going. Like I said, go on.
No, I was going to say, is there anyone in particular that you've from what you've seen, or that would have had the biggest influence on you that you would have followed or learned from?
Yeah, kind of. Like, I think both of us have had experience with Jerry Duffy. And I still refer back to his 32 marathons in 32 days, the book that came out of that. And I think that was my first experience of somebody really putting the effort in to do something which seemed outrageously difficult at the time. And I just think that there are a couple of people who say very little, but what they do say is really important. And Jerry Duffy is probably one of those people. He always speaks about being lucky to get to do something as opposed to have to do something. You never have to run. You never have to do this training session. You never have to lift weights. But I mentioned that I'm at the tail end of a long-term injury. I hurt my back, and I had a couple of back operations. I've been 6 years trying to get back at it. So I'm just pulling myself out. And I have really come under the impression that, I am damn lucky to be able to do this, because there are people who can't do what I do. So Jerry Duffy is possibly one of those people that I would always refer back to. And you know what? I haven't spoken to him in years, and I haven't seen anything that he's done in years, but it's still there in the background of the impression that he left on me. There's that's probably, if you were to push me to pick one person, I'd go for Jerry.
No, it is a really powerful, and and I've had many sort of, again, similar interactions and have his books, and you just remind me of that one, actually. That really is such a powerful thing to be able to say when you're when you're doing anything that you're kind of struggling, or if you're at that moment where you're doubting yourself, which we all do go through, whatever it is, whether it be, as you say, in career, business, relationships, family, exercise, eating, whatever it is that if you go to that thing of like, well, I get to do this is the opportunity. And when you start to see things as an opportunity to do something, and the privilege that you have to do that opportunity, that gratitude idea, that really does kind of immediately shifts your thinking.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, it's, you know, I don't want to go on about it, but I have changed my manner of thinking to being very happy that I'm able to get out, you know, and train. And in fact, I was speaking to somebody on Twitter just this morning about running efforts, and you know how I am really perfectly happy being as slow as the slowest person, because it means I am getting out there. And you know, I have spent the week doing what my watch has told me to, and whatever algorithm they put together, they are making me run as slow as a snail. And actually, it's really enjoyable. And I started off going, God, I don't want to be this person who is, you know, shuffling along. But actually, it's meant that I've been out running for the last 7 days in a row, and I feel no ill effects because of it. I'm looking forward to go out running again. And, you know, I am no longer defined by being somebody who has run a 4-hour marathon or a 4-hour 30 marathon or whatever. I am just somebody who goes out running, and I am perfectly happy being that person. You know, my old age has set in that I am just, I'm happy being me. Does that make sense?
Oh no, it absolutely, because it's, again, it's from the people I've spoken to as well, and one of those things that again, from chatting to people, and in sense of themes come up when I ask this question, and that whole thing of, some people use the word authenticity, some people use it as self-awareness, some people say it, but it's just that comes back to like, I'm just going to be me in whatever that me is, and accept it. And I think it's really interesting what you said about the whole thing of sort of identity as well, because it's a really interesting thing, and a sense of like that thing of like, because there was a few years where we were similar in a sense of like, where I was like, I think from 2013 through to 2019 myself, I was doing an average of 2 to 3 events a year, probably minimum of 2. And then it so happened that when at the end of 2019, I was planning to take a break from doing big events. And I had to, because obviously COVID came in and stopped. And there was that thing of like, but if I stop doing this, who am I type thing? Even though I say, I'm not, there's no danger of me winning. There's no danger of me getting a sponsorship deal from any like bike manufacturer or kit manufacturer anytime soon. But because I had invested so much of myself in it, was that thing of like, oh, who am I going to be then if I don't do this? And it's interesting in a sense of like, I'm okay. I'm still who I was. I'm still me. It's all good. And it's like, and it's one of those things, I'm still doing bits and pieces. I'm still keeping myself going. So it's interesting that you can still do that, but not completely have everything pinned on it.
It's perfectly okay. Don't get me wrong. If you want to identify yourself, and if your goal is to be a 2-hour 30 marathoner, that's grand. It's just not my goal. And once people understand that you have to live your own life and live your own relationship and practice your own goals, then there's a certain calm that comes over me. If I don't want to run today, I'm not going to run today. I have to deal with the consequences of that. But I don't want to be the person who has to get out, because if I don't do this sprint session, then I'm going to miss a couple of seconds off this run or that race or whatever. And you know, that's just not me anymore. It used to be me, and I failed, and I didn't want to be continually seeing myself. And you know what, other people didn't see me, because you know, there's a lot of projection out there where you go, people have this label about me. Actually, people couldn't give a damn about you. They have their own problems to deal with. You know, they're not looking at you. They're not talking about you. They're not going, oh my God, did you see Killian? He ran 4:31. He didn't run 4:29. they couldn't give a shit. Excuse my
Yeah, no, they
French.
shouldn't. No,
But
you're right.
and actually, there's a calm that comes over you when you realize that. Go, you know what? I'm okay with this, and I'm dealing with myself
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, no, love it, absolutely. And so much of I can definitely resonate with that. I have one more question for you, Killian, before I let you go, which is, what's important for your future?
Yeah, I think for the future, for me, it's important that I stay honest with myself, and it's a really personal goal.
Yeah.
That if I am honest to say that you tried your best, you know what? If they engrave on my gravestone, "Here lies Killian Byrne. He tried his best." Like, that will be a perfectly successful life for me, because sometimes my best isn't good enough, and I'm learning as a father of 2 teenagers, nothing I do is good enough. But at some stage, I hope they will return to the fact, actually, you know what? He tried his best. He meant well. I want to be a good friend to people. I want people to trust in me and believe in me. But yeah, if my gravestone reads, "He tries his best," then life was a success.
I love it. It's been a pleasure to catch up and chat to you, Killian. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, James.
Thank you for listening to What's Important to You. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and share. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Again, you can follow me at James Dean Coaching on Facebook and Instagram. Connect with me on LinkedIn, or find out more about me on jamesdeancoaching.com.